Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, a UFC betting preview presented by DraftKings. I'm your host, Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down the 13-fight card for UFC Mexico City. Give you our best bets, favorite underdogs, top props, and more. If you'd like to tell us some of the bets that we discuss on today's show, make sure to find the click slip link both in the podcast and the video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. 13-fight card, prelims 5 p.m., main card, 6-fight main card, 9 p.m. for Marina CDMX or the Mexico City Arena in Ciudad de Mexico. The main event, Brandon Moreno, about minus 220, going up against Lone Air Kavanagh, plus 180, short notice replacement in place of Asu Almabayev. 5-round flyweight bout, currently juiced minus 140 to the over 4.5 rounds, plus 110 to the under. If this was a normal full training camp for Lonnie Kavanagh, if we had seen him at 5 rounds previously, even coming in on short notice, if this would be a normally sized bet for me. Model still likes him, makes him about plus 135. Everybody in the world publicly on Brandon Moreno this week. It seems like, the spot that would be set up for him to get him back in the win column. But I was against him in his last fight with Tatsuro Taira. I think he's looked like a lesser version of himself in his recent fights. He's had a number of fights at flyweight, and I just think he's on the wrong side of the divisional age curve at flyweight. The caveats about Lonnie, obviously, the short notice replacement angle, the fighting at elevation and in 5 rounds for the first time angle, up at 7,400 feet of elevation in Mexico City. Definitely a significant concern the longer this fight goes, especially in light of the fact his last bout against Charles Johnson dominated the first round, was minus 900 on the money line after the first round, and seemingly slowed and then got KO'd in the second round. I don't know if he took a body shot and started slowing from that, if he just tired, naturally as a result of not being in shape, or maybe he took some damage to his body that caused him to slow. Curious what your takeaway is on what led to that knockout, Billy. But just in August, so not like it's been a significant amount of time. It's not like he took a year off. It's only been about 6 months off or so since that knockout, but I do think he will be the faster striker than Brandon Moreno early. I think he's very talented. I think this guy has all the makings of a future champion. It's just a very awkward spot to throw him into, especially given the elevation factor. Now, what I did want to point out, Billy, and what I want to kind of contextualize the rest of the card with is the stats about Mexico City. Going up at elevation, we would assume there would be a lot more second, third round finishes as a result of these fighters tiring out. The finish rate in Mexico City across the past 78 fights, which I believe is 7 cards, just 32%. 32% finish rate across 78 fights. Now, obviously not a substantial sample, but we've seen far fewer finishes than we would expect. 14 of those 25 finishes occurring in round 1, so actually a little bit overweight to round 1 from what we would normally expect. And I guess the small takeaway you could take from that data would be the fighters are kind of gassing out early and then not able to finish one another. And anecdotally, I have kind of noticed that watching some of these fights where, the guys who you would think have finishing upside or fighters I bet to win inside the distance, if they don't get it done in the first round, it seems like it's not materializing and that both fighters are sort of eventually tiring out, not just the one you would expect to. So having said all of that, Billy, I know you're targeting Lonnie Kavanagh early in this fight, Brandon Moreno live and late. So what are you actually planning on betting for this fight pre-fight? Obviously targeting Brandon Moreno live, but then also wanted to get your takeaway as well on what you thought led to the finish in Kavanagh's last fight.
Yeah, a lot of interesting points there. As far as the stats, that actually does kind of make sense to me. We used to always joke about heavyweights, that they would either get a finish in the first round or just lean on each other for 3 rounds. That was the joke about like local or amateur heavyweights. Now it's just all heavyweights, right? Because they're not like the guys in the UFC now. Most of the heavyweight division passes for regional competitors 10 or 15 years ago. But it's exactly what you said. If we both get tired, I can't finish you. I mean, it's that elevation turns everyone to Tai Tuivasa versus Taliesin Teixeira, where we're both just like not really able to do enough to put the other guy away. And unless one guy has considerably better cardio, then I can see why we don't see a lot of those late finishes. As far as the finish, I think he got tired from grappling because in the first round, he was beating Johnson up on the feet and looking really good. Fine. Came out second round, more of the same. And he almost wanted to like prove a point because he was getting a bunch of takedowns, but they were all high amplitude takedowns. And then Charles Johnson popped right back up. And I think he just tuckered himself out with the grappling. which for me, if I'm Brandon Moreno, I'm going to force that grappling as much as I can to try to see if, some guys are just more comfortable. Some guys can strike all day. Some guys can grapple forever. Rarely can people do both. And I think Kavanagh could probably kickbox with you for 7 or 8 rounds and look great. But in the 3rd or 4th round of a, jiu-jitsu session, might be sucking air. He's just more comfortable with his karate background on the feet. So because of that, the live angle on Moreno for me is going to be really heavily dependent on when and if we see some grappling out of either guy, really, because I don't think defensive or offensive from Kavanagh matters so much. I'm not as worried about it being short notice because he was already booked for a fight 2 weeks after this. So he moved it up a little bit. Not ideal, but not huge. But yeah, 7,000 feet elevation for your first 5-round fight against a guy who's fought 5-round fights for 5 years consistently. Not a great starting point. But like you, I was leaning towards Kavanagh. I think there is some loss from Moreno. Combining both of those ideas, Lonnie in the first 3 rounds is plus 650. If you can get one of those split props, could also probably play with some SGPs and maybe get a slightly better line if you cut off a few minutes at the end of that. I really like that as an angle. I just see him fading. But if I think he's going to win and don't think he'll do well down the stretch, logically, that's what leaves me with. And again, Moreno in the 4-5 decision is only plus 110. I think we probably get a better live price on him at some point, or he wins in the first 3 rounds and that bet would have lost anyway. So I'm looking for some kind of grappling exchange, no matter who wins it, to then jump in on Moreno, because I think that's when we're going to see Kavanagh fade. But if it's 1-1 after 2 and Moreno looks fresh and he's still minus 180, minus 200 or whatever, I'm fine with jumping in on that. Obviously, we always want a better price and we want a more tired fighter if we can get both those things.
Yeah, I think the most notable thing across the past 3 or so fights from Moreno has been he wasn't going to proactively grapple against Tyro, but against Steve Erceg, he really didn't press on the gas pedal in terms of proactively grappling him. They ended up fighting to a pretty close decision that Moreno won, but Erceg actually outlanded him at distance. It was a relatively, looking at the stat line, a relatively fortunate decision for Moreno. I don't remember the round by round going back in hindsight, but
the one takedown he got might have saved that one. Like getting the one takedown in the control time might have been what, and like just do more of that. You're good at that, but I digress. Sorry.
No, I think that's the point, is if we see the same Brandon Moreno that we've seen in recent fights where he's only going to mix in, 1 or so takedown attempt per round, I think Kavanagh might be the better overall grappler in terms of like scrambling and explosiveness. And I just think athleticism, pure athleticism, if these guys are going to be interacting in close quarters, give me Lonnie's speed all day and his athleticism and explosiveness all day. Brandon, certainly the more strength of schedule, like the better fight IQ, more educated inside of the actual cage, but the experience only goes so far when in the early minutes, one guy has a big athleticism advantage. So I think Kavanagh, if he's going to win this fight, as Billy pointed out, either has to finish Brandon Moreno probably in the first 15 minutes, or he has to win the first 15 minutes or so of the fight and secure those first 3 rounds. But do think there's some value on his money line at plus 180 down to about plus 150 would be a bigger bet if the scenario or the spot were a little bit more favorable for him. We're going to move on to our fight of the night between David Martinez and Marlon Chito Vera. Martinez minus 305, Chito around plus 245. It's bantamweight bout heavily juiced to go to a decision, minus 425 to the over 2.5 rounds. Billy, I have a breakdown up for this one on actionnetwork.com. I don't really have a huge betting take here. I kind of feel similarly to how I felt about the Dan Ige bet, which did not work out last week, watching Dan Ige get finished for the first time in his career. So perhaps it's an omen that Chito Vera is about to suffer the same fate, because I would lean to Chito plus 3.5 points or a live bet after round 1. Chito always takes round 1 off and then looks to work his way back into the fight, but he hasn't really even been doing that of late. He's just kind of been stuck in first gear throughout the majority of his fights, which has been very frustrating to watch. So if I am jumping in on Chito, it's probably live, or the point spread plus 3.5 is minus 135. Billy, though, is going to take the approach that I just alluded to and fading Chito where you're able to by betting on Martinez to win the first round. And then he also likes Martinez inside the distance at about plus 600. Is a big height and reach advantage for Chito, 3 inches taller, 3-inch reach advantage, but he is 6 years older. So Billy, you just think the cumulative damage is kind of catching up with him and you expect him to finally take a finish?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, Cheeto got dropped for the first time 2 fights ago against Davy Figs, which there's no shame in that in terms of the name Davison Figueiredo, but that was Figueiredo up at 135, which makes you, former flyweight, big flyweight, but still. And I can't find actual stats on this, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't have probably the most significant strikes absorbed in the division, if not UFC history. He's got 2 fights where he took over 200 significant strikes, like 6 or 7 where he's taken over 100. Like,
I think Chris Moutinho in 3 fights, Chris Moutinho might be even with him, but yeah, you're on it.
Yeah, if we keep giving Chris Moutinho and Jose Daniel Funky Cold Medina fights, those guys will challenge him from a different division, obviously. But yeah, I mean, he's going to get finished sometime. Everybody is super durable until they aren't. David Martinez throws everything at 100% power, and he jumps around a lot. Really good movement, really good power. I wrote pretty extensively in my breakdown about this. I went well over my self-imposed word limit, so sorry to anyone who wants to read it. But he's one of the karate/taekwondo style fighters, I think, who does it the best. A lot of times we see those guys carry their hands low and kind of lean back at range, trying to avoid damage. He carries his hands like a boxer, and he moves really well. And that allows him to not just get teed off on all the time. And it also means he's not just relying on head movement and like reflexes defensively the way we see guys like Wonder Boy or MVP. They're so reliant on their head movement that when those reflexes slip, it's a bad thing. With all that said, Martinez in round 1, the point spread that DraftKings is now offering, love this line from our friends at DraftKings. You can do it all the rounds, but it's moved to minus 165. I got it at minus 150. Still love that. Cheeto has lost 9 of the last 10 first rounds he's been in, including fights that he's gone on to finish himself. And Martinez is such a fast starter. His style uses so much energy because he throws so hard and because he moves so much that I worry about him at elevation, even though he lives in Mexico City. We haven't seen him fight too many extended fights, especially not at elevation, that this seems like a bad combination for him. So to your point with Cheeto live, this is a great live betting opportunity if Cheeto gets hurt early or something like that, and we get a big price on him. But the other one, as you pointed out, Martinez inside the distance, that one's more of a sprinkle for me at plus 600. He throws everything really hard, and Cheeto's been hit a lot. Eventually, that's going to come to a head. I don't know if it's this fight for Cheeto, but I think it'll be soon, and Martinez seems like a guy pretty well suited to do that. So 6-1 odds, that's like 1/10 of a unit, 2/10 of a unit for me. Then I'll have about 3/4 of a unit to win half on that round 1 point spread. And if we get Cheeto at plus 400 after the first round or something fun like that, of course, that is an evergreen thing I just said that you could plug into any discussion of any Marlon Vera fight, because he doesn't like to fight much in the first round. Sometimes he doesn't fight in the second, third, fourth, or fifth rounds either. Historically, he would turn it up, though, after we get out of the first frame.
Yeah, I feel like he has to, or he's getting close to getting cut if he doesn't actually start turning it up in the second and third round again, let alone coming out ready to fight in the first. So I kind of want action on Cheeto here somewhere, which is why I lean to the point spread, but just a bit skittish after that Dan Ige head kick KO loss last week. Billy and I are aligned on a favorite underdog this week. We're also aligned on our best bet for this week. Remember, we come to our bets and we don't discuss them. We drop these in our files separately. So I was very excited to jump into the sheet and see that my favorite underdog, my lone favorite underdog, and my best bet, which is a lone best bet this week, were already in there on Billy's behalf. Now, we do have a very important nickname situation to discuss in this fight with Damian the Baba Yaga Pinas. Yes, you did not hear that incorrectly. Pinas. All due respect to a dude turning into a fighter after growing up with that name. Probably was not the easiest. He's taking on our boy Wes Schultz, though. Baba Yaga about minus 250. Wes Schultz about plus 205. Just wanted to express my disappointment if your last name is Pinas, not doing more with your nickname. You didn't rhyme it. You didn't make a double entendre out of it. You just stole John Wick's nickname, and you're a dude from the same country as Jairzinho Rosenstrike. You're not Slavic. So what are we doing with the nickname here? You could have gone with the meanest, the hardest, the uncuttable. Personal favorite that I came up with, every UFC nickname ever in the middle of a name or at the beginning of a name. This could have been the first one ever at the end of name. You could have gone Roman numeral 3 leg, which would have read out as Damian Pinas, the third leg, go for it, brother. Do something. Just come up with something better than the Baba Yaga, please. But in this fight, Billy, I'm sure we both saw on tape, and I'll get to your nicknames in a moment if you have any recommendations. I'm sure we both saw on tape, though, the very binary nature of this fight. Pinas does hit extremely hard, but he cannot grapple, and that's all Wes Schultz is going to be looking to do. So I like Wes Schultz on the money line. I make him closer to plus 165. You can get him as high as about 225. I also like his submission prop as well at plus 480. I make that closer to plus 370. Do you view Wes Schultz as a likely submission threat for this weekend? Do you see him choking some Pinas?
Yeah, to end on a high note there. Yeah, I do. That's a good angle I didn't think about. Party Time, Wes Schultz. Love that nickname for him. If you look at him, you'll go, yeah, that's Party Time. Like if we lined up every fighter on this card and asked you to pick Party Time, you'd probably get it right. He had a Suluev stretch on the Contender Series, which is awesome. You never see that. Aljo hit one of those in a grappling match. Or maybe it was Chase Hooper. I don't know. One of those super tall, long featherweight dudes hit one of those. But yeah, that was really cool. Good grappler. Not a great striker, honestly. Pinas hits real hard. I'm worried Pinas is going to blow his load early, so I also think Schultz could be a live betting opportunity. Pinas never been out of the second round. Schultz has a decision win. And, you know, wrestlers have that cardio typically where they can go forever. It's just such a much more demanding cardio sport than striking. To your earlier point, I think if you grow up with the name Pinas, you kind of have to be a fighter or never interact in public again. Like you're going to find yourself made fun of a lot. And if you happen to be a big, giant, scary dude, and you're going to learn, right? Like you're going to learn that lesson pretty early one way or the other. I personally like the Baba Yaga. I know it's not South American in nature, but it sounds like it should be. Like it sounds Spanish or Latin.
I'll give you that.
And he's from Aruba. So I like it, but to your point, yeah, there's many different directions you could go with that.
There were just so many possibilities.
But I honestly think it's a great nickname matchup in general. The Baba Yaga versus Party Time.
Pretty good.
It's, you know, usually we get Pitbull versus Pitbull, so this is a pretty good one, all things considered. But yeah, to your point, submission makes a lot of sense. If he gets hit by Pinas early a few times and doesn't die, this might be one of those where you got to get the live bet in at like the 75-second mark instead of waiting till after the round. This is a curtain jerker too, so it's going to be hard to like time that, like make sure you're sitting down, got some books open and ready to go. Not sure that I'll necessarily be quick enough to jump on those myself with the tape delays we've talked about, but it will be a good opportunity. It will be very hard to time.
Aljamain Sterling hit a Suluev stretch against Cody Stamann to win a UFC bout, and Zabit Magomed Sharipov hit one against Brandon Davis at UFC 228. I believe there's a third as well, but I think there's only been 3 Suluev stretch submissions in UFC history. The one for Wes Schultz on Contender Series, I don't think officially counts as a UFC bout, but all the same, we're on the underdog in that matchup. If you're on Twitter, we have a great new feature. If you see a bet from any of your favorite action experts or anyone on gambling Twitter, you can now tag @Playbook on Twitter and tell our bot to build you a bet slip at a book of your choice. It will build it out for you with a quick slip link that opens right up to your sportsbook. So keep an eye out for our new tool @Playbook on Twitter.
The Action Network podcast has teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook, where new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets if your bet wins. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on star player props and in-progress games right as they happen. To get started, use promo code Action Network when signing up with DraftKings. Again, use code Action Network when signing up and bet $5 to get $200 back in bonus bets if your bet wins. The crown is yours.
Let's move on to our prop section. We're going to cover a number of fights here before we eventually pivot to our one best and final bet, and then one additional fight we're going to discuss. We're going to stay on the main card for now, though, and go to Daniel Zellhuber. He's about minus 500. He's been in that price range and lost a number of times against King Green, coming back at plus 380. His lightweight bout is minus 135 to the over 2.5, plus 105 to the under. And Billy and I both like Zellhuber to finish this fight. We had different methods picked out initially. Billy likes the longer submission odds. My projection was pointing towards the KO prop, but I'm happy to just take the ITD odds. I make it about minus 112. I think DraftKings was offering about plus 105. Do show parlay value on Zellhuber based on how he's fought in the past. Have no interest including that on any of my tickets. Billy, what did you see in terms of your tape breakdown on this matchup? Because Zellhuber has certainly disappointed in the past, but I think we might both be inkling towards this being near the end for King Green.
Yeah, 100% on that angle. Knockout is definitely more likely. I mean, it's more likely in almost every fight at this point in the UFC. We just don't see as many submissions as we used to. But the one thing, when King Green gets hurt, he does try to initiate some grappling and kind of dive in and stick his head out. We saw him just jump right into a submission against Paddy Pimblett. That was a triangle. Daniel Zellhuber is super tall and long for the division at 6'1" with a 6'5" reach. And he's really good at like the front headlock series of chokes. So Darce's, Anacondas, even a Bravo choke here and there. This might be one where if I could get some of the books that allow you to pick specific submissions to combine those all into one, I would bet on that. I really see Zellhuber catching him at range, Green kind of diving in and then getting his head caught into one of those style of chokes where he just leans forward, kind of gets caught in some front headlock thing. So that's why I'm going with the submission prop. I don't mind the inside the distance at all. Obviously, a knockout in that situation is more likely. On the flip side, you always get that little bit of equity of he's about to finish. Bobby Green rolls to his stomach, rear naked choke. It gets graded as a submission, even though most of the damage was striking. So I kind of like submission for that. And it's 6-1 instead of, what did you say knockout was, about 2-1?
Not even that good. I think closer to like plus 160, and then the inside the distance is right around even money. Some books it's juiced slightly to minus 115. So
yeah, just given the price discrepancy there, again, I'm with you. Like knockout is overwhelmingly more likely. This isn't a card in general where I feel super great about a lot of bets, so I like having more smaller but high payout options when possible.
Yeah, a number of heavy favorites on this card. Definitely more of a probable card. We did both pick out one dog that we liked, and again, one money line favorite that we both like coming up in a little bit. But the height and reach advantage, Zellhuber 3 inches taller, 6-inch reach advantage, and a 13-year age gap between the pair. Staying on the main card, Edgar Chairez minus 325 against Felipe Bunez at plus 260. Flyweight bout juiced at minus 195 to the over 1.5 rounds, plus 150 to the under. The bout is favored to end inside the distance. Chairez, 2 years younger, also has a 2-inch reach advantage. Now, Bunez, 36 years old, very dangerous in round 1, but as a result of the age, his aggression early, and certainly the elevation in Mexico City, his cardio is going to fall off of a cliff after the first round, where Chairez is one of those building style of fighters who seemingly gains more energy and gets better the longer he goes. Probably going to get put in submission danger at some point during round 1, may still win the minutes in round 1, and I'd expect him to take over in rounds 2 and rounds 3 at a pretty high clip and likely put Bunez away in the second or third round. So Chairez round 2 is plus 400, round 3 is plus 700. You could put 0.15 and 0.1 respectively and hope you hit on one of those 2 round props. Or you could potentially go with the Chairez point spread. I didn't look to see what it is, but considering he may get, put in a submission attempt, but still land more damage than Bunez in round 1, I like him to win all 3 rounds here on at least one of the scorecards in the first round, which is all you need to cover the minus 3.5. I'd imagine though, given the spread given the money line spread, that the point spread is probably 5.5 as opposed to 3.5. Nope. So I'll have to check that out. But Chairez 2-3,
7.5.
7.5. Yeah, I don't think
at minus 135.
Can't do that.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
But the 2-3, I think I was considering like the same game parlay, Chairez and over 1.5. I want those first 2.5 minutes of round 2. So give me Chairez 2-3 plus 400 plus 700. As Billy said, not the easiest betting card, but I think there's a bunch of small prop pokes you can take on a bunch of these fights. So Billy, did you end up having a read or a bet here?
Generally speaking, on this card, I looked at a lot of point spreads. They're all juiced like that because like basically every fight is favored to end inside the distance, which makes the point spread not super relevant. Obviously, some of them are going to go to a decision. I actually thought about Chairez by submission because he is a fun grappler, but that's only plus 275, which I thought that would be longer against Bunez. So staying away for that reason, that was my I'm going to look into this, see if it's playable. I don't think it is at that number. If I got plus 400 or longer, I might.
We're going to move on to Ryan Gandra. I think this is the first or the final fight on the prelims. Ryan Gandra minus 675 against Jose Daniel Funky Cold Medina at plus 490. Gandra has a number of round one finishes regionally, and I just need to double check with Medina real quick because I want to clarify the first fight was a contender series fight, but under the UFC promotion, there's only been one fighter to ever finish with an 0-5 record. This would technically, I guess, be 0-4 with also a contender series loss. Are you aware of the one fighter with the 0-5 record, Billy?
CM Punk didn't get that many chances. It's got to be some kind of like celebrity, something like that, who has another reason to be there.
It's
Someone
the most
came over
random
from Strike
dude.
Force or Pride. All right, I got no idea.
John Alessio, he was a Canadian fighter. Now, he actually fought some really good competition. I mean, he also fought like Carlos Condit and lost to him regionally. But here was his UFC run. So Diego Sanchez, and we're talking prime Diego Sanchez. Sorry, lost to Pat Miletich via submission first, then Diego Sanchez. He lost to Thiago Alves via decision on Ortiz versus Shamrock 3, which kind of gets hidden because it's not a numbered UFC card. It's one of those titled UFC pay-per-view cards that I don't know if those ultimately ended up counting in the 100, 200, 300 countings or not. And then they ended up bringing him back two more times, and he lost another pair of decisions to Mark Bocek and Shane Roller. So normally after 4 chances, 0-4 in the UFC, you're done for. John Alessio ended up getting 5 chances, did not win a single one of his fights. Now, there was one other dude. I didn't watch the fight specifically, but this is what I read about it. Yoshihiro Akiyama. He had a controversial... What's that? Sexyama.
Yeah, Sexyama. He's a legend.
Sexyama also fought Alan Belcher. He did it at UFC 100, and he actually won a controversial split decision, which made him 1-4 in the UFC. Again, I haven't gone back and watched that fight, but supposedly Sexyama should be the only other guy aside from John Alessio with an 0-5 record in the promotion. And I say all that to say that Funky Cold Medina has the chance to join John Alessio in that exclusive list on Saturday. Again, that first fight was the contender series fight, but some history on the line for the plus 490 underdog. Gandra favored to finish him in round 1. Gandra in under 1.5 rounds in the same game parlay is even money. His KO1 prop is plus 340. That's probably the two things I'm looking at here. Did you have a breakdown or a bet that you're interested in playing here?
No, I couldn't get to any angles I really like. I don't love Gandra as a prospect. Like, he's fine. He's just not one of those guys I got super excited about watching on the Contender Series last year. I will say, Sexyama, after going 0-4, could have been, or 1-4, did beat Amir Sadallah. So either way, they gave him another shot. He found himself a win in there. Don't think it happens for Funky Cold Medina. I believe he's a practicing veterinarian who like owns his own practice and just kind of does some UFC stuff for fun on the weekends here and there, which is fine. I mean, more power to him. I wouldn't take all that head trauma if I had another option and it was going this way. Should also mention David Martinez is an orthopedic surgeon, which while being a doctor and in the UFC seems hard and probably ill-advised, being a surgeon specifically in a sport where you use your hands to punch other people in their hard head seems not great. But so a lot of medical professionals on this card in a weird twist.
This is very awkward. Yeah, we need the Chinese doctor as well. Got to get her back.
Mi.
Yeah, Xing Mi got to get herself on this card. We could have a medical clinic in the parking lot, and then they could do the fights and get the card.
They wouldn't even need a ringside doctor. Just keep those fighters around.
They could rotate and alternate between fights. Exactly. This is some brilliant game planning we got going on here. Should have been consulted.
Cost-cutting measures.
Yeah, should have been consulted for the combined medical event / UFC Mexico card. I mean, they got to get something done considering the quality of some of these fights, considering the lines that we have for these, including Christian Quinones, who's a minus 675 favorite against Chris Moutinho. Yes, the Christian Quinones, who's been off for 2 years, lost his last 2 fights, hasn't won in nearly 4 years, is a minus 675 favorite against everybody's favorite punching bag, Chris Moutinho, who I believe has been, if you look by the numbers, because of the Sean O'Malley fight, I think his negative strike differential remains like minus 9 strikes per minute or something absolutely absurd. Moutinho, we know, has pace. He has a ton of heart. I actually kind of like this fight to go over 1.5 rounds. It's minus 130. It's not going to be a fun sweat, but considering the ring rust, the cage rust for Quinones and Moutinho's general durability, I also don't think Quinones has like crazy power. The over 1.5 at minus 130 would be the one spot I'm looking. The fight also to go to decision has slight value as well. Just I think I'm scarred after not that I had a bet on it by any means, but watching Herb Dean step in and stop the Moutinho O'Malley fight with like 30 seconds to go when the preceding 30 seconds looked like the entire rest of the fight that had happened before it. And I don't really know what was different that caused the stoppage, but yeah, the over 1.5 rounds between Moutinho and Quinones in a very chalky bout here as well. Billy, another chalk fest. Any reads or bets for you here?
I strongly considered your angle, but because of the O'Malley fight, but then he lost in the first round, including against, at the time, 42-year-old Guido Canetti. I was like, all right, like, you don't need a ton of power to put him away, apparently. Did not outstrike Guido Canetti or Malcolm Wellmaker either, so it's not just the Sean O'Malley fight that's leading to the 14.68 significant strikes per minute he has absorbed in the UFC, which has to be a record. They don't start counting those till you get to 5. Another guy, he might get to 5. He could easily get to 0-5. This will be 4 here, spread across 2 different stints. If he
makes it a fight of the night and loses, yeah, he'll get another shot.
So they seem to love him too, and for good reason. A lot of times they seem to love people that you wonder why. This one you get, right? Like, it's a great story. The heart and the desire far outweigh the talent and the ability. And they're not doing it. They tried to give him Guido Canetti, and that was their one, like, all right, if you can't beat him, we're just feeding you to killers. This is somewhere in between.
They should put Moutinho on Jose Daniel Medina's shoulders, and they should get to choose one heavyweight that they want to fight.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. Something like that would work for both those guys. But yeah, so we'll see. I actually really like your angle. I'll probably have a small play on like that, and that goes to a decision. It's gonna suck though. You're gonna have
and Quinones by decision is also some pretty decent odds. I think the GTD is around plus 220, and I think Quinones by decision is like plus 350, and it's going all 15 minutes. I mean, I guess Moutinho could outpace him, but it seems unlikely that he will pull the upset. But stranger things have happened.
And we thought every fight last weekend was lined out inside the distance, and then like none of them did. So, I know that's not a great argument for why to bet anything, but that's if you want to have some weird fun, like fun in an uncomfortable way, just bet overs on Chris Moutinho fights and see what you get.
Yeah, or potentially, even the stats I alluded to earlier with the finishes not necessarily materializing late. So maybe the better approach is to take the GTDs as opposed to the juice 1.5s, right? Definitely something worth considering. There's definitely fights where I view the dynamic and I'm like, if a finish here is going to occur here, it's probably early. GTD is a better bet than the over. Given the cardio dynamics of these fights and, the elevation, that could potentially be the approach to take. It's just still a relatively small sample, under 100 fights to make that judgment off of. Let's go with the fight that's a little bit more closely lined. That's Javier Reyes at minus 230 in the featherweight division against Douglas Silva de Andrade at plus 190. Reyes is 5-inch reach advantage. He's also 8 years younger than DSDA, who I believe is 41 or 42 years old. He also hasn't fought in 2 years. Douglas Silva de Andrade, he's absolutely jacked up, in terms of like the muscle on his body and the physicality, probably some supplements involved with that. But as we've seen oftentimes, especially lately, these guys who do that to their body, who continue to look shredded into their early 40s, have cut a lot of weight and their bodies start to shut down on them. And I don't think DSDA has ever been knocked out. I believe he has been submitted. However, I do think it's eventually coming. He's also been knocked down and bloodied up pretty badly in recent bouts. I make Reyes' KO line about plus 220. You can get him as high as plus 390 to be the first man to knock out Douglas Silva de Andrade. Billy, do you have any thoughts or reads on this featherweight matchup?
Yeah, a few thoughts. He has a corner stoppage against Petr Yan, where they stopped it after round 2. So not technically a knock. I mean, it would win the bet as a KO, TKO, DQ. Only 40. Put some respect on his name. Not even 41 yet, Sean. How dare you? Also, you said two things that didn't connect them. Looks super jacked up. Hasn't fought for 2 years. He was serving a suspension for performance-enhancing drugs, which is why he wasn't in the cage. We could see like a late career Vitor Belfort version of DSD show up here with a lot of that muscle gone now that it's being tested more rigorously, and that wouldn't shock me. So for all those reasons, like your angle, would have to see what inside the distance is, because Javier Reyes can grapple a little bit more of a striker, but it wouldn't shock me. You know, he's got 8 submissions and 10 KOs on his record. So inside the distance is vaguely close. I think you just play that. But yeah, I'm with you broadly speaking. Not exactly sure how I'm going to play it.
Yeah, I just want to find the wins inside the distance odds. I feel like you had to pay juice on it, which is why I ended up going with the KO prop, since it was a nice round number. Close
plus 140. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's a pretty substantial difference. Definitely favored to win by submission.
DraftKings has submission more likely than knockout. So given what you said, I think knockout's probably the sharper play.
One final fight with a very wide money line. Well, we'll have one in the additional fight section as well, but another fight with a very wide money line. That's Francis Marshall at minus 750 against Eric Silva at plus 525. Featherweight bout over under 1.5 rounds is that minus 135 number. Again, plus 105 to the under. 12-year age gap. Marshall, the younger man, has the much better control rate, should be the much better grappler here. Kind of should have the ability to finish this one however he wants. Also had that very unlucky decision loss. Was it to Myron Santos? Am I remember the name correctly as well? Where it was considered that he got robbed on the scorecards. But Marshall should probably roll here. My projections, though, do say the over could be the play, or that goes to decision. Marshall 2-3. Round 2 is plus 300. Round 3 is plus 600. And Marshall over 1.5 takedowns, just minus 115. I feel like that is an absolute steal of a price. So, Billy, what do you think about that takedown prop? Over 1.5 minus 115. What do you think about the late props? And then any other betting thoughts for you here?
Yeah, love that takedown line. Can't believe I let you beat me to that one. Interesting. Eric Silva, also a guy pushing 40, 38. Hasn't fought in 2 years. Much older guy. Like, we're seeing a similar dynamic in a lot of these fights where they're set up a certain way. This is the only one where like the Latin fighter is the huge underdog, I think. Maybe not the only one. I don't fact check me on that right yet, but I'm one of very few. I think the takedown prop is probably the sharpest. Francis Marshall was some kind of collegiate or high level wrestler. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if he was a collegiate wrestler. He's pretty adept at it. He also moved to ATT in Miami recently. So he's extremely well trained, also probably on some supplements of his own. But yeah, I think this guy's going to continue to improve in the division. Should get a finish here. I think it probably comes, though, at some point after the first 5 minutes. We're going to move on to our best bet, and then we're also going to cover the Santiago Luna Angel Pacheco fight before we sign off. But our best bet comes in the Eileen Perez against Macy Chasson bout, women's bantamweight bout, over under minus 345 to the over 2.5, plus 250 to the under. Could be pretty violent bout between these two. Chasson keeps a pretty high pace. Perez certainly capable of finishing a fight on the ground, and that's what I like her to do in this matchup, is to secure a submission at 11-1. If I was choosing a fighter, if I was coaching a women's 135-pound fighter, if I was choosing a fighter and I knew that my fighter had the ability to arm triangle somebody, I'm picking Macy Chasson and her giraffe neck first. I mean, she's first one up for me. Not to mention, anytime she's been taken down in the past, she just kind of lays there and doesn't show a ton of urgency at getting off of her back. So provided she proactively wrestles, and to this point, that's what she's shown herself to do, Eileen Perez should be able to get on top of Macy Chasson, and I would hope eventually submit her and finish the fight. But I make her money line closer to minus 200. It's currently about minus 170 at DraftKings. I saw as low as minus 160 around the betting market. Perez is the side for me, but you will see on the stat page, Chasson 5 inches taller with a 6-inch reach advantage. So, Billy, would imagine you see the same thing. Initiate the takedowns, get on top, keep her there, or finish the fight via submission. Where do you like Perez up to, and what did you see here?
Yeah, she's not any taller if she's lying on her back. That's the great thing about grappling and why we're not doing boxing or kickboxing. I was very anti Aylin Perez. I thought she was just kind of a gimmick. And then she dominated Carol Hoza, like partially via grappling. I was like, man, like that's hard to do. People don't just take down Carol Hoza, hold her there, not get reversed, just really cleanly win extended grappling segments against Carol Hoza. And Aylin Perez did that. She also had to shoot a lot of takedowns to get there, which isn't great, but it shows that she's like capable and willing to stick to that game plan and will relentlessly pursue it. Merab shoots a ton of takedowns and doesn't have a great accuracy rate, but he's going to do that and he's going to make it happen, which I'd like to an extent. You worry a little bit about the cardio here. That kind of leans to your submission angle rather than Perez straight up. But I want Perez straight up because, damn it, I just want a couple money lines on this card, and they're hard to find in a way you're going to play. I think anything inside of minus 200 probably take. You're not going to have to go that far for it. But yeah, I'm on Aylin Perez for all the reasons you said as well. Love the submission prop. It's nice to just have one like semi-close money line fight. Before we get to the other bet, though, I'm also betting on the other women's fight. We missed that in the prop or the underdog section. The short notice replacement. We have Regina Terran from Mexico stepping in for Sofia Montenegro in a weird twist because Sofia Montenegro fought on the Contender Series, lost a close split decision in like one of the best fights of the year where Dana White gave them both contracts. Sofia Montenegro was fighting in that fight as a replacement for Regina Terran on the Contender Series. Now the shoe is on the other foot with Terran replacing Montenegro. Either way, this fight comes against Ernesta Karakady, who I've been looking to fade at every available opportunity. Karakady won her Contender Series fight via split decision. She has her only win in the UFC via split decision. And she has her 2 previous non-UFC wins also split decision. So of her 6 professional wins, 4 of them were split decisions. She does not pull away from anyone ever. She just does a ton of high volume, very low output stuff. Terran is a high level striker and kickboxer. She was actually preparing for a Muay Thai fight on this same date. Also, I know in Mexico, I believe also in Mexico City, could be wrong on that second detail. She's going to land the harder shot. She's going to, more clearly pull away when she does stuff. I think a better, like more explosive overall athlete. Karakady is a former swimmer with great cardio, but not super explosive. I'm seeing about plus 150 on Regina at this point. We were getting a better line on Montenegro before that fell. That was my one luck ratings pick this week. So very sad to not get that one, but kind of any plus money against Karakady I am going to take because she just doesn't do enough to justify being favored in really any fight. She fights everyone super close.
Should have a 5-inch reach advantage. I'm enjoying looking on UFC stats currently because it has Terran listed at 4'7", which I know is not the case. She is 5'7". That is a typo, but I would freaking love to see a woman's fighter rocking up to the cage at 4'7". I think Pooja Tomar was like 5'1", right? She was really tiny, but not quite 4'7".
Oh, also before we move on, Regina Terran's nickname, Kill Bill. Kind of fun. She has a bunch of pictures on her Instagram of her dressed up as the bride from Kill Bill. She sells t-shirts with her in that motif. Kind of love that. It beats heavy-handed when you've like never knocked a person out, which is Ernesta Karakady's nickname. Unless they're doing it ironically, in which case more power to you, but I kind of doubt it.
Some heavy-handed split decisions for Ernesta Karakady. That is about the most you're going to get. Terran just 21 years old, so really interested to see her performance here. I have not watched any tape of her. Do not have model projections as of yet because it is such a short notice booking to the point.
Also, not even in my notes. Tried out. I should say she tried out for the WWE Performance Center as well, like in between stuff. So she's been a TKO company prospect in various ways. Tried to get her on Contender Series. I think there's like a visa issue. Tried to get her in WWE. Maybe the UFC. This one will actually stick. But I think she'll be fun. From the little clips I've seen, she throws real hard and just does stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, looking forward to checking out her fight, especially if she's going to be plus money. I'll have to run some last-minute projections on the bout and see if I find anything worth betting. The other fight that we did not get to as of yet, the 13th and final, Santiago Luna at minus 625 against Angel Pacheco at plus 455. This fight is a pick'em to the over 1.5, minus 110 to the over, minus 120, leaning slightly to the under. Luna's an inch taller, 4-inch reach advantage, also a 12-year age gap between the pair. He's the younger man of the two, just 21 years old, like we just mentioned. with Taryn. Fewer than 10 pro fights, but I believe he's finished almost all of them. Pacheco hasn't fought in 2 years. He's never been knocked out, has been knocked down a bunch of times. This should be a high-paced war because Luna's willing to put himself in danger in order to land shots. Pacheco, though, very durable and will throw a high volume of strikes back, provided he looks the same as he did 2 years ago before his layoff. So as a result, I think this money line could end up looking a little bit skewed. The model likes the favorite here. I would probably prefer his knockout odds, though, for the fight to end inside the distance. Billy, not really sure if I'm going to end up betting this one. Didn't have any strong leans aside from maybe Luna KO. Did you come away with any potential bets here?
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this one. I love Luna for DFS. It's a really weird DFS week because there's no close fights. So you got to find some cheap fighters. Luna is not cheap, but of the like upper echelon, the 9K plus fighters on DraftKings, he's only 9,300. And Pacheco has absorbed double-digit significant strikes per minute between the Contender Series and the UFC. And he's also, 10 years older than his opponent and has been out for almost 2 years, which is the third time I'm saying that on this podcast, which is not a great sign, especially when you've been knocked down, had a little bit more fights in the past, or taken more damage in the past, I should say, against the 21-year-old fighter from Mexico, who's obviously the A-side here. The nice thing from a DFS standpoint is if it's a high-paced war that they both make it to the end, Luna could get there just on significant strikes. And if he knocks him out, obviously that's great. And he's, $500 cheaper, which is huge, than Christian Quinones, $300 cheaper than Francis Marshall, a couple hundred cheaper than Ryan Gandra. And I think just having those multiple paths to a score you have to have is super helpful when he's one of the cheaper of the two. So no bets for me, but will be a foundational DFS piece because you can't play all these expensive fighters.
Other than Schultz, who are you looking at on the cheaper side?
One of the female underdogs for cash games, just because those fights are both likely to go long. Good floor play. Schultz is a big one, and then Cheeto. Even though I'm playing Martinez inside the distance, that's because that's plus 600. I think Cheeto can probably just give you a good floor and maybe steal it with the second and third round. But yeah, it's rough. Like you really got to. Oh, and Lonnie. We talked about Lonnie. Obviously, I typically stack the main event, but I love Lonnie for GPPs.
I'm realizing I skipped one of your prop bets as well. Actually, as we're talking through that would be Imanol Rodriguez going up against Kevin Borjas. You like Rodriguez to win that fight via knockout. I'm glad I decided to talk about the DFS perspective because I saw Borjas there and realized we didn't talk about Imanol. So I believe he was a guy who got pulled from Tough and they just stuck him on Contender Series and then he's been training with Daniel Cormier. Is that kind of his story?
Yeah, he lost a splitty to Joseph Morales that he probably should have won. Joseph Morales went on to win that season. And then they pulled him on a Contender Series, knocked the guy out in 2 minutes. All of his professional fights are finishes, 5 of those by knockouts. Borjas is a guy I actually really liked coming into the UFC, but it just hasn't worked for him. And he, his debut was against Josh Van, so no shame there, but it hasn't really got better as the competition has gone down. Imanol Rodriguez is, I think, one of the better prospects we've seen in a long time. Crazy, powerful striker, weird, short, explosive style. He's 5'4" with a 64-inch reach, which even at flyweight is pretty short, but just extremely powerful. And then Cormier is teaching him to not get wrestled to death, which is a pretty good combo. So like him by knockout. Another guy I really like for DFS. What did I say the knockout was? Plus 120. I think we might see a little bit better prices as this one moves around if you shop, but anything plus money for him by knockout, I think is a sharp play. Borjas has not. Oh, no, he got knocked out on the ground by Alessandro Costa. But, yeah.
That'll do it for our UFC betting preview for UFC Mexico City. You can find more UFC betting content from both Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com. And if you'd like to instantly tell some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick links both in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app. Sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. We'll see you back here for UFC 325 next week.